You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Will Rogers. Safe to say he's the best quarterback Mike Leach has had at Mississippi State. What makes him so effective in this offense?
Well, I think the first thing, the learning curve wasn't very steep for him because, he grew up the son of a high school football coach. It's very offensive-minded. So he kind of hit the ground running in many respects. It's a college prospect. He was pretty far advanced as far as film study and things like that. But, Will's an ultimate competitor, and he's not a guy that's going to take a lot of chances. He understands that the smart play is always the right play. And so he doesn't put the ball in harm's way very often. He did last year against LSU a couple times. He paid for it once. But he's matured, and I think his decision-making has gotten even better this year, and his arm's gotten a little bit stronger. And I just think he has the full command of the offense right now, which is why things have gone so well.
Does he have the receiving talent outside to compete with the elite-level defensive backs in the SEC?
We certainly think so, and it's not because State doesn't have a go-to guy. Last year you had Mekhi Polk. I think what's happened is they've gotten better as a group. Austin Williams is a guy that's been here forever and a day. But, you go out and add guys like Justin Robinson from Georgia and then Jordan Mosley from Northwestern, and they're not even starting. And Robinson's actually running third team. And it's because that group as a whole has matured. They played mostly together as freshmen 2 years ago. And so by committee, they're really getting it done. And I think most people that are followers of Mississippi State football would probably agree that it's probably the most wide receiver talent Mississippi State's ever had.
How good is the running game, Steve? We have seen obviously good running backs come through that program here in the last decade or so.
Well, it's difficult to really quantify, because they don't run it an awful lot. They've run it more this year because I think Will has matured to the point where he's like, you know what, you're going to give me a light box, I'm going to hand the ball off, and we'll get 4 or 5 yards here on first down. And so I think Will is seeing the field better, and the ground game probably benefits from that. But you also got guys like Woody Marks and Dylan Johnson now that have 2 years of SEC experience under their belt. They've been through the wars. They're bigger, faster, stronger, and I think they're running with a little more conviction. I think you saw that last week against Arizona. State even ran a halfback lead last week, and I didn't think that was ever going to happen again. I thought that left with Sylvester Grimm days. But it's been entertaining to watch. But, they're very capable players. And, again, these are guys that played together 2 years ago as freshmen, and now they've got some esprit de corps, shall we say.
Is the offensive line? Would you expect when you look at the LSU defensive line with guys like Gay and Ojulari and Jaquelin Roy, obviously Mason Smith's lost for the year, which is unfortunate, but how does that matchup shake out with the State offensive line and the LSU defensive front?
I think that's probably one of the things you really got to watch. It's like I think the Mississippi State defensive front has an advantage over the LSU offensive line. And then on the same side, I think the State offensive line, I think, has been good, but they haven't been tested like they're going to be Saturday night. I mean, and listen, Ojulari's maybe not 100%, but even at 80%, he's better than most players in the country, And so I'm eager to kind of see how that thing kind of plays out. But I think this could be a lower scoring game because of the fact that I think both defensive lines are going to have an opportunity to make plays.
Steve, I do want to flip it around, though, because that's been LSU's bugaboo, and we've talked about it a ton. LSU's defensive line or offensive line, has just really struggled. I mean, there's no way around that. So if you would walk us through a little bit about that Mississippi State defensive line and what we could expect to see.
Well, it all centers around Cam Young, literally and figuratively. Cam Young is a guy that's a Mississippi, success story. And Bob Shoup told me, he was defensive coordinator on Jim Moorhead's staff. When they signed him, he said he's going to be the next great small-town Mississippi State D-line story, and that's exactly what he is. He's probably a mid-round draft pick this year, but he's in the guy from Meadville, Mississippi, that went to a rural high school and just kind of grew up country strong and learned how to play football on the college level. And he is a monster in there. Now, he's not a guy that's always going to gain ground, but he's a guy he's a plugger. He's a guy that's going to occupy double team more times than not, and that frees up the guys to make other plays. But they've been really good. Randy Charlton's a guy that had a really good game against Arizona. Jaden Crumedy is still out, and he's arguably State's best defensive lineman, but he has not participated so far and probably out for a couple more weeks. When he first went down, we were told he could be back for LSU, and then the prognosis changed a little bit. Now we're hoping it's A&M, but we don't know. But that group, I mean, it's all juniors and seniors. It's guys like Nathan Pickering, that, U.S. Army All-American guy. So these are, Mississippi State's been able to attract some pretty quality defensive linemen over the years, and I think that this is the year where that group has kind of matured to the point they have the depth, they have the talent to really compete in the trenches.
I do want to ask you, Steve, about a Louisiana kid, Tyrus Wheat, who is from A-Meet and has just been was really good, obviously, against Arizona. How does he factor into this ball game this weekend in particular?
That's a great question, and I think Ty Wheat is a guy that has probably committed himself from a physical fitness standpoint, perhaps better at any point in his career. There was talk last year that he might come out, and he made the decision to come back, and I think that would have been a mistake to go out last year. But I think he has shown a real sense of urgency, and it's shown on the field. It's like he puts the time in a weight room, and then it's translated his play on the field. And I think that he's the guy, especially against this running game. I think that it's going to be difficult to get wide when he's on the field because he is so athletic. He can fight through blocks. To see him against that tight end matchup with LSU is going to be awfully interesting. I just think that he's the guy that could be a real difference maker in this ball game for State, and he was last weekend. And it seems like he's all over the field each and every game, and they're moving him around a lot more than they have in years past. And I think he enjoys that, that versatility and a chance to kind of get out and show what he can do.
Look, the undeniable strength of LSU's team is their wide receivers. They're deep and fast and athletic and talented and all that good stuff. And if they're going to have success, they got to get the ball to those guys on the perimeter. How does that matchup look with State's secondary and LSU's receivers?
Well, on the outside the numbers, wide receiver versus corner, I think it's going to be one of the better matchups in the country, to be quite honest with you. Emmanuel Forbes is a guy that some NFL scouts have shared. They have a late first round, early second round grade on him. He has been absolutely outstanding, has incredible length. He can get out there and run with those X receivers. And then in addition to that, DeCamerion Richardson, a guy from Louisiana that kind of a late bloomer, is a guy that's really blossomed. And State goes out and gets Marcus Banks from Alabama out of the portal. And a lot of people thought, okay, well, Banks will take that spot that Martin Emerson had. Now he's in the NFL. And DeCamerion Richardson held the job through the spring and the fall. Not one day did he ever run with the second team. And he held off that competition from Banks. And he has been absolutely outstanding. Now, he's a year away from being draft eligible, but a lot of people believe that he will command a higher draft pick than Martin Emerson or Emmanuel Forbes. They just think that he's built a little bit better for the pro game, and he's really just kind of learning to play as a starter for the first time. And so that's something you kind of got to watch there, too, is, does LSU have some tricks up their sleeve, perhaps, where they could take advantage of a little bit immaturity there, perhaps? But from an athleticism standpoint, I expect State to be able to compete outside the numbers.
Hey, Steve Robertson's our guest for a couple more minutes on Twitter at ScoutSteveR. They're genespage.com, part of the 247 network. We all know that the quote last year with Mike Leach, with the place kickers and holding open tryouts, it was rough. And there's been a little bit, as I understand, watching from afar, a little bit of a turnstile as well this year. Are they settled at place kicker coming into Saturday?
Well, I thought they were until last week, Ben Rabin is a guy that took over after Massimo Biscardi missed 2 extra points last week, and Leach is just not a very patient guy with all that. So they pull him, and then Rabin, of course, is 100% on touchbacks on the kickoffs and knocks home a couple field goals and extra points. And I think they feel good about him right now, but I don't know if they trot Biscardi back out there again or not. I think Leach last year, it became such a bone of contention last year with kicking. They went out and recruited, 4 in this recruiting class, and the scholarship, one of them, and then the other ones were preferred walk-ons. And it was like an army of kids out there for a while. And then, of course, you get into fall camp and it's settled. But I think that's the last thing Mike Leach wants to worry about. So I don't think he's going to leave anything to chance. So I think Ben Rabin's probably the guy kind of moving forward, and we'll see. You miss an extra point. Okay, that's part of life. You miss 2 in a row, you're probably not going to play for a while.
Yeah. If this game comes down to a kick, Steve, I think either fan base is going to be holding their breath. All right, if State's got the blueprint to win it on Saturday, what does it look like?
Well, I think the job starts with, can you contain Jaden Daniels? I think he is skilled enough as a passer that it's very concerning. But what worries you is what does he do when he plays outside the offense? What does he do when things break down and he gets outside? And State had some issues with that last week. They were able to get pressure on Delora, but didn't always get him on the ground. Well, Delora wasn't a real running threat. Daniels could be. That's a guy right there. you drop into coverage and you miss a tackle in containment. Next thing you know, he's running 25 yards, and next thing you know, you're on SportsCenter. And so that's the big concern, I think, for State is can they contain Jaden Daniels' running ability? Because he's not a dual-threat quarterback in that respect. He is an elite quarterback that has the ability to run the football. And so it makes him different, I think, than a lot of other quarterbacks that maybe are similarly situated. I think that's job one. You've got to make Jaden Daniels be a quarterback and not beat you in a game of backyard football. Now, I think, secondly, State's got to keep Will Rogers upright. You've got to find a way. LSU's going to make some plays, and there's no doubt about it, especially with that front. You got to get some protection and then be able to kind of attack down the field. And I don't know how vertical State goes, but, working horizontally and kind of working those intermediate routes and kind of death by 1,000 cuts. I think that's, State's a ball control offense. People don't think about that because we don't run the football that often. But you look up every year, and State's among the national leaders in time of possession, which Leach thinks is a meaningless stat. But when you've got to chase those receivers, for 40, 45, 46 minutes a game, it's going to wear on your secondary.
LSU and Mississippi State Saturday, 5 o'clock in Tiger Stadium. He's Steve Robertson, genespage.com. He's on Twitter at ScoutSteveR. Steve, we always appreciate it, man. Have a great weekend. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Matt.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.